Hey guys, we are starting the book of Ezekiel today, 1 through 4. And Ezekiel is a Jewish exile. So remember, they got brought out of their land of Jerusalem. They went into the Babylonians' land. And so Ezekiel's writing from being in exile, being in Babylon. And what he writes about is he explains why Jerusalem fell and what God is still doing. And so we kind of have the breakdown that my Old Testament survey book from when I took that course, the breakdown it gives is chapters 1 through 24 are oracles of judgment, and then 25 through 32 are oracles against false gods, and then 33 through 48 are messages of hope, restoration, and glory of God's kingdom. And I love how all of these books always end in like this hope. If you haven't noticed, every single book in scripture ends with this beautiful hope, this redemption, this restoration as a promise. This, you have like Job, which is like, right? And we went through Jeremiah, which is, but it always ends in this hope and this glory of God. It's super beautiful to see it just be a common thread throughout the whole thing. Okay, so jumping in, verse 1. So chapter 1, we go into this. So first off, when I first read it, I'm like, why does it have two intros? And then I realized, and so I had to read it like 3 or 4 times, that verses 1 through 3, as I'm like, am I missing something here? That it's like, first I saw a vision, and then it was the Lord came to Ezekiel. So it's like first person, then third person, first person and third person. I think I'm saying it right. And then it gives a timeline of both. And what it was is that the timeline, as I kept reading, I'm like, okay, this is him introducing something that's going on with him and his life. And then he's moving into, okay, now as Ezekiel, who's in exile at this time in history. So it's kind of like big pit, like him personal. And then he's like, all right, now I'm about to take record. It's kind of how I took it, which I thought was super interesting. Okay, and then he goes into this this glory of the Lord that was shown to him, these beings with these wings and these foreheads and wings that covered their legs, and then on it was this like throne with this like glowing being, okay, this bright glowing being. And if you read what is that called, Bible Project, if you go onto bibleproject.com or just even Google search Bible Project Ezekiel, they have videos that kind of sum up the books that you're about to read, which are really, really fantastic. Like, they are really awesome. And they do this cool, like, cartoon sketch to take you through. It's super cool. And so that Bible Project is on Bible Recap when you're doing it on your phone. And so occasionally I don't usually watch all of her, like, I don't ever watch her videos, sadly. I just don't have time to do that. But I do sometimes watch the Bible Recap the Bible Project. And I remember Ezekiel's one I really, really liked when I was doing the Old Testament survey class. So I was like, oh, I want to rewatch that and re-familiarize myself with it. And I like it because it drew kind of a picture of these words. And I'm a visual person, so Bible Project was a great thing to check out if you're a visual person. But the first thing that stuck out to me in today's reading was in this 28. So this crazy vision happens. And in verse 28, it says, like the appearance of a bow in the cloud of the day of rain was the appearance of the brilliant brightness all around. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of God. And when I saw it, I fell to my face and I heard the voice of one speaking. And the Hebrew word here for glory, when it says the glory of the Lord, it's actually kavod, which means figuratively like weighty, like it had a weight to it, figuratively, like it was this magnificent weight. And to me, it just put me when I was called to reclaim the first time he spoke it, I was walking in the park, and I heard the Lord say he wanted me to host his praise concert to unite his church and call his children to him. And I was like, I don't know how you're going to do that, but sure. And then when I told my husband, he's like, you're crazy. I don't think that you heard from the Lord. I think you're just like, I don't know, bored or something. And so he's like, just forget about it, because if it's truly God, the Holy Spirit will come again. And a week later, I was singing a praise song in my car, actually, that Broken Vessel song. And now every time I hear that Broken Vessel song, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I remember that moment. But in that moment in the car, I was singing this song. This presence came into my car, and I know I'm going to sound crazy, but when I read this stuff, I'm like, oh, I know what he's talking about. This presence that, like, it felt like a weight was on my chest. I could barely breathe from the glory of the presence I was in. And I was just sobbing. Like, if I was standing, I would have fallen to my face, but I was sitting and I just was sobbing uncontrolled. Like, I couldn't not cry because of the presence that I was in when he told me again to host a praise concert called Reclaim, to unite his church and call his children to him. And then he gave me the blueprints of what that looks like. And it was I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I grew up Catholic. I now attend a very conservative church. So like, not even like speaking in tongues or like prophecy or like none of that is part of my teachings on Sunday or my circle of people. And so this was not like anything I've ever experienced, ever heard anyone experience. This was so, what the heck is this? And I'm like, whoa, like I have never. And so then like I got literally right after I got out of the car and I ran in and told my husband, I'm like, all right, listen, I know it's God. This just happened to me. And it was incredible. It was insane. Like, I know it was him speaking. It was not my thought. It was God himself. Like, it was the Lord. Like, this was so the Lord. It wasn't just a prompting or a thought or like a good idea or like, oh, maybe God's leading me to do this. Like, it was like presence, like this weight. So, reading this, when I saw this glory of the Lord and this Hebrew word for glory being this figurative weight because of the magnificent of what you're in front of, where he falls to his face because it's just the weight of this glory, the weight of his presence. I'm like, oh, I know that weight. Like, and what a beautiful thing it is to be blessed with that, because I don't think that it's super common. Anyways, chapter 2, going into chapter 2, verse 7 here, where am I here? So there's this call that God speaks to him, and it says, and you shall speak my words to them, whether they hear or refuse to hear, for they are a rebellious house. He's telling Ezekiel, go into, you're going to tell all the exiles and you're going to preach to them all the things I tell you, you're going to tell them. And they probably won't be listening. They're going to refuse to hear, but I want you to do it anyways. And he says here that, and you shall speak, and whether they refuse to or not, because they are a rebellious house. And what came to mind here is when God calls us to do something, we are never responsible for the outcome. We are only responsible for our obedience. And so that outcome can look very different. There can be people with hard hearts. There can be people who make their own choices. But for us, we are not responsible for that outcome. So like the first Reclaim, I would tell people this all the time when they're like, well, what if nobody shows? I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm not responsible for the outcome. That's for God. I have to be obedient what he told me. And same for this one at OSU. I'm not responsible to get the horseshoe or to fill it or to make sure everybody's enjoying themselves. Like, I'm not responsible for any of that. I'm only responsible for what God told me to do. And he said to get that horseshoe, to get that playlist, to have that band ready, and to start spreading the word. That's what I'm responsible for. And so I'm going to do my end of the bargain here. But I'm not responsible for the outcome or what God chooses to do with that. I'm only responsible for my obedience. And that's for all of us. We need to know this. We need to know that we're not responsible. So like, you need to teach your kids the way to go. That's scripturally, we're told as a parent, if you wear the label of mother or father, your first mission that God called you to by giving you this life is to lead them the way they should go. So you have to speak it and tell them, but you are not responsible for the outcome. If they choose to depart from God and if they choose to deny him, if they choose to walk another way, that's not on you. That's not on you. You're not you're not responsible for that outcome. You are responsible though for obedience, for doing what the Lord said, which is teaching him the way to go. So I think that it's a really important thing to know. Okay. And then in verse 5, I'm jumping back up real quick. At 30 years old, he's called to be a prophet. So Ezekiel was not anything. And then it says here, God says, now I want you to be a prophet among the people. So he wasn't a prophet before or a priest before. Like he was in the line of priesthood. And at 30 years old, that's the age that you would go into priesthood and serving in the temple. So it said at the start that he is now 30 years old. So this is the year he would have become that. And God, in his goodness, he's like, hey, in exile, by the way, you're going to be a prophet for me. And he's calling him now at 30 years old, which I thought was super cool, that it's not, sometimes we end up becoming something we weren't ever expecting to happen. And I'm sure as an exile in Babylon, he's like probably thinking, man, at 30, this is what it would have been. But the temple's burned and Jerusalem's destroyed. And yet God still had a beautiful calling for him, which is super neat. Okay. And then in chapter 3, what I notice in 7 through 8 is that when I feel God is, so let me read it first. And then I'll share my thoughts on it. But the house of Israel will not be willing to listen to you, for they are not willing to listen to me, because all the house of Israel have hard foreheads and a stubborn heart. Behold, I have made your face as hard as their face, and your forehead as hard as their forehead. And so what I noticed when I was reading that is when I feel God is silent and I'm praying and receiving and not receiving any respond, it's often because I'm not willing to listen and hear, or I'm not praying subjectively. And so I think a lot of times that's what came to mind with this, of like, their hearts are going to be hard. Yours is going to be a hard face, a hard head, and a hard forehead. And he was probably meaning more in this sense, like now that I've read the whole thing for today, so putting on chapter 4 with this, he probably was meaning that you're going to be really focused. But when I first read this, I didn't have chapter 4 yet to look at. So I was looking at Justice 3. And when I was reading this, I'm like, man, it's interesting, because what I would say that when I'm not hearing God, I often realize it's because I'm not trying to listen. I'm like speaking and barfing it all at him, constantly asking him to tell me and show me, but not being still and listening and waiting for him. Or I'm not praying subjectively. I'm praying what I want with my motives behind it, asking for something that might be apart from his will, which one thing that, one story I can share on that is when I was pregnant with our number 10, I always am praying for God to give us a name of our child. And usually he's directed me. There's only been 2 times where he's spoken a name, but usually he just directs me. And so I was praying for that direction, and the kids kept saying like, oh, we're going to call him Johnny. We like the name Johnny because Sing, the movie Sing, was huge with like Johnny, the gorilla who plays the piano, and they like love that Johnny. And they're like, oh, he's going to be Johnny. I'm like, he's not going to be Johnny. I'll never name my kid Jonathan. Just to let you know, that's not a name for me. I don't like it. Like it's so common. It is not me. Like it is so not me. I will never, like literally on my do not name list, it would be on my do not name list. Like I'm not naming him that. But I was praying and seeking the Lord, and my kids would tell me, hey, we're going to call him Johnny no matter what you name him, just to let you know. That's going to be his nickname because we all want it to be Johnny. So you name him what you want, but we're calling him Johnny. I'm like, you guys are annoying. But anyways, so praying and praying and praying. And then finally I'm on my knees and I'm like, Lord, I want the name you have for him. You know it. And this was always my prayer. Like, the name you have for him. And I just want that name. I want you to reveal it to me. What name do you already have written for him? And Lord, I just want to submit and surrender to you, since I haven't been hearing you, that like, it can be anything you want. Even if it's Johnny, like, I will love it if it's from you. And he said, his name is John. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, I truly wasn't hearing, because I was against what he was going to say. He had to first soften my heart in submission to let me see. My kids were telling me something. They were saying it was already on their heart. He was always meant to be Johnny, which is just so funny. So Praying submissively is very tricky, but it's like this ultimate surrender, right? Sometimes we need to reshape our prayers to look like surrender, to seek God's will above our own, and truly be willing to listen, whatever the response is, which is more of a heart posture, right? It's something that I don't think I'll ever stop struggling with, because I'm human, right? We want what we want, sadly. But thankfully, we have a gracious God who will soften our heart and pull us in and continually come after us. I love it. Okay. Last in chapter 3, verse 17 and 18. So he calls Ezekiel a watchman. So Ezekiel ends up getting this really great responsibility, okay? And he's made him a watchman over Israel, which a watchman was somebody who'd like stand on the gate. And if he saw like the enemy coming or a fire or something that was threatening, he would call out to the people. And if the people chose not to listen, that was on them. But if he did not call out, if he was not staying awake and watching, and sharp, if he was not doing it, it was on him. And there was a big punishment for that. And so God says, you're a watchman here, to sound the alarm, right? To share. And if you miss, you'd be in trouble. That if the people ignore what he's saying, that's on them. And so God is clear with Ezekiel that he is to speak exactly what God speaks, even if they don't listen, because obedience had to be his top priority, his obedience over the outcome, what it could be. He had to just have pure obedience. So God gave him this vision of seeing him in all his glory. Then he calls him this prophet and he says, okay, I'm calling you now into a space, into a title, into a leadership role. And I want you to know the weight of this, that you have to be obedient to all I say, or it will be on you. Their souls and their blood will be on your hands because you are too scared to say it. So now like you're getting the whole deal. And you have to speak it, even if they're not willing to listen. You're not responsible for the outcome. I'm not going to hold you responsible for that, but you are responsible for obeying me. And so he goes into that detail. So God is so clear before he gives him then chapter 4, this street theater, this theatrical event that he is going to have a couple things for Ezekiel to do, to play out, to show Israel the judgment of the years and what God is doing. Ezekiel's going to act this out. And so I love that he does this before. So he sets him up for success. That he gives him his glory, so he knows this is for sure from him. And then he speaks very clear that even if they don't hear, hint, hint, they're not going to hear, I'm warning you, to just keep going forward and keep doing exactly what I said. So God is very clear. And then in chapter 9, Ezekiel, where is verse 9 here? Let me read it to you. And you take wheat and barley, beans and lentils, millet and emmer, and put them into a single vessel and make them bread during the days that you lie on your side. 390 days. He's going to lay on his side, guys, for over a year. 390 days. And he's going to eat bread that is cooked on cow poop the entire time. And it was to signify the punishment that was going to happen, this eating of this bread of afflictions and wearing the weight of the punishment of sin for 390 days. And what kind of came to my mind as I zoomed out on this was how we see Jesus, a little picture of Jesus here, who Jesus comes and he pays it all. That this punishment that they had to go through for sin, all the punishment they paid that, and then there was still life after, so there was sin accumulating, and Jesus came and he says, I'm going to pay it once and for all. No more is there going to be this 390 days of, this toil that I'm the one who stands in the gap. Now you can just be forgiven. There's no penance. You're just forgiven. That's it. That's all that scripture says here. And Jesus, not only that, I also saw how there's this bread of affliction and how much Jesus says he's the bread of life, which is like this contrast, right? So that was kind of a cool thing that came to mind as I was reading that. And then going into the last thing here in chapter 4 is just this overarching picture of this street theater that Ezekiel does that looks insane. It looks absolutely insane. And on top of it all, God even tells him that nobody's going to listen. He's going to lay there for 390 days eating bread cooked on poop, and nobody is going to listen. He's going to look like a crazy guy, and nobody's even going to listen. So it's not even like you have this huge, great praise for it, or like, oh, it worked. It saved all these people. No, it was obedience, and obedience to God alone. And our obedience should be always for God, not for man. It shouldn't be our desire to save souls, right? Like I say all the time, like, oh, if I can save another soul, if words of mine and my presence or my testimonies or my words can save another soul, I want to still live. Even if I don't have sight, hearing, can't move my body and in a wheelchair, and I'm just like this vegetable in a bed. If my words or my presence can bring another person and show them the light of Jesus, I want to live still till the very last breath. But bottom line, it's not for man, it's for God. I want that many more people praising his name. So it's a mind shift of not desiring success for man, but success for God alone. And it's hard because this is like a super deep faith that you see here in Ezekiel that's so rare, because he's willing to literally look insane even if there will be no outcome. Like simply to be so focused on obeying God that this is probably why chapter 1 happened first, the glory of God. He felt the presence, so he knew the presence. So when he was weak in this call of feeling crazy, people probably mocking him, people probably finding him disgusting, literally just losing any rapport he might have had, losing it all, he can go back to the presence of God that he felt, that he knew was truth. And these commands that God said, even if they don't believe, keep going. And a testimony that I'll quick share in that, because we're out of time here, is again, reclaim for me. It has been almost, what I've realized is that the more I read the Bible, the more familiar with the stories I get, and the more I walk in obedience and die more to myself and live in this surrender, the more I can relate to so many of these stories. And while I don't claim these men are like far more like holy than me, like I'm not claiming that. So hear me in this, that I'm broken, very broken, and I'm growing, like really growing all the time. There's never going to be a day that I'm not growing. I'm stumbling each and every day. But overarching, when I read these, I'm like, man, there's so much familiarity in this thing that happened first of God just sitting, being in his presence, and this weight that I felt that was so real, to now people finding me crazy. Every day people are writing me angry emails and are very upset and call me crazy for what I'm trying to do at OSU. And I'm like, listen, it's not me trying to do it. Trust me, I believe you. It is crazy and it does sound ridiculous. And I'm not anybody. You're right. I'm not thinking I'm anybody, but it's what he spoke, and I have to obey that, because otherwise that's on me if I don't obey. So I have to keep obeying. So I'm sorry. I don't mean to be annoying. I don't mean to keep pushing this at you guys. But I have to keep knocking because he's told me to. And so I just got to keep doing it. And, you're going to find me crazy. Loved ones find me crazy. My husband has definitely hit points in this reclaim journey where he's like, are you sure you're not just making all this up? I'm like, yeah, I'm not, because I go back to that presence. And then he continually has walked with me. He's continually spoken again, just like he did to him here, of here's some little direction. Know that they're not going to listen to you, but I want you just to still obey me, because that's what I'm calling you to do. And that's things that God just continually reaffirms with me to keep me steady and my hands strong. I don't know what reclaim's going to look like. Like I said, the outcome doesn't rely on me, but my obedience does. And so staying so firm in that of what I can imagine, just the sliver imagine, because I am not tied to the ground and eating poop cakes. I am so thankful that is not, this is a fun thing. Really, I count myself very blessed to have this type of thing that God's calling me to do when you look through scripture of all the things it could have been. But I can understand how you could look at this and be like, how would he even be able to do that with 390 days eating poop cakes? How can someone even do that? When you feel that presence, that weight, that thing you feel in your soul, you can't deny it. You can't not follow it. You can't forget it. It's just embedded in you, and you have to just keep going. And so I could imagine how God just beautifully played this out by doing these steps to encourage Ezekiel on this extremely hard mission he was going to have him go through. And that's what we get to hear today. So we'll see you guys tomorrow to continue on in Ezekiel.